excited to share work we have done at the Stanford Neuroprosthetics Translational Lab, aiming to understand how we can advance speech BCIs towards conversational speeds in people with paralysis. Recently, speech BCIs that decode neural activity into text have shown promise to restore rapid communication to people with paralysis. In the past 4 years, the field has gone from decoding individual words at a rate of 15 words per minute by Moses et al. In 2021, to the first high-performance decoding with large vocabularies in 2023 by Willett et al. At 62 words per minute and Metzger et al. At 78 words per minute. In 2024, Card et al. Showed near-perfect large vocabulary decoding at 32 words per minute, and the most recent paper by Littlejohn et al. Shows brain-to-voice decoding at 91 words per minute. A lot of progress has been made, yet all the participants in these studies use their speech BCIs at speeds well below that of conversational rate. In this work, we wanted to understand why that is and whether it's possible for speech BCIs to go any faster. Our participants have expressed a desire to be able to communicate more quickly. Participant T12 says it's painful to speak slowly. It bothers me and the listener. I think a BCI user would be better able to reintegrate into the world if they can speak closer to a normal speed. What I miss most is not having an equal voice in group conversations. I'm sidelined. Participant T15 uses his speech BCI for everyday use, said accuracy is the most important to me, but sometimes I forget what I'm saying midway through a sentence because my mind moves way faster than I'm able to speak. So it's very clear that speech rate matters to BCI participants. So why aren't they speaking any faster? To answer that question, we collected data from participants T12 and T15 who have ALS and participant T16 who has pontine stroke. Each participant is implanted with microelectrode arrays placed in the speech motor cortex. They are dysarthric as a result of their condition and can no longer produce intelligible speech. First, we wanted to understand whether participants naturally speak at their maximum possible speed or whether they are intentionally slowing down when using the speech BCI. We therefore instructed each participant to attempt to repeat the sentence, "I need good music," as fast as they possibly could while trying to vocalize and move their articulators. Simply prompting each participant to speak faster, we found that they are all able to surpass their typical chosen speech rate, yet are not able to reach conversational speed. We then asked each participant why they couldn't speak any faster. All 3 participants share they have difficulty controlling their lungs and thus vocalizing is uncomfortable, difficult, and exhausting. Participant T16 said, "I have to move my diaphragm to talk, and this is really tiring." Along similar lines, T12 said, "Remember, I'm not just nonverbal, I have other ALS impacts, breath control notably. I can only hold my breath for a few seconds." So based on this feedback, we wanted to remove the breath limitation and see if participants could speak faster. We asked each participant to mouth or mime their words or silently speak as fast as they possibly can, attempting to make movements without actually producing any vocalizations. When we tested this behavior, we see that they are able to surpass their typical speech rate and their maximum vocalized speed. However, they still fall below that of conversational rate speech. T15 said, "Mime speaking is like when you're stuck in quicksand and you have a weighted blanket or 2 on top of you." We wanted to then identify if there are other alternative behaviors without movement that may show potential for restoring conversational rate speech, while also maintaining user comfort. Recent work by Koons, Meshtakras et al. Has shown that the representations of inner or imagined speech are present and decodable in speech motor cortex. Motivated by this paper, we used 2 inner speech strategies for a speech BCI. 1, imagining to move the articulators with attention to the throat and tongue without making any physical movements, dubbed Imagine Motor Imagery. And 2, imagining to speak the word aloud with attention to the sound that would be produced, called Imagine Auditory Imagery. When we evaluated these 2 strategies in our participants, we see that Imagine Motor Imagery gets to conversational rate speed with T12, and that Imagine Auditory Imagery gets both T12 and T16 to conversational speed. Although the same was not true for participant T15, who also reported not being able to separate out the 2 imageries in his mind. Our future work will explore whether other ways of imagining speech may help participants like T15 go faster. So now that we know that each participant is able to surpass their typical speech rate, why is it that they naturally limit their speed? One potential reason is to increase the accuracy. T16 says, "I've noticed as part of a closed loop speech, if if I slow down and mouth one word at a time, I have a lower error rate than if I try to talk at a normal speed. T15 says if I want to make sure that I'm not going to say something that is wrong, I will slow down and use a more defined vocabulary. So this naturally leads to the question, does speech rate really affect decoding accuracy? To look into this further, we developed a karaoke style task. The karaoke bar presented on the screen prompted participant T12 to speak at the cued sentence at one of 4 preset speeds. This enabled us to control the speed at which T12 was speaking for offline decoding analysis. We used the brain-to-text decoding pipeline from our prior work, Will et al. In 2023, to decode the neural activity into text using recurrent neural networks combined with language models. Neural decoders trained and evaluated at 4 different speeds show an increase in word error rate as their speech rate increases. Even when training a model on a large data set, including all speeds together, the same trend holds. These data also show that slowing down can only help so much, as there may be an optimal speed at which accuracy is highest. For example, with this T12 data, it shows that 30 words per minute is her optimal speech rate for the lowest decoding error. So we then asked each participant if they would be comfortable trading off some performance for a faster speed. T12 said she would definitely trade reasonable error for speed. 7 to 10% error is okay with me, especially if I'm talking conversationally, so that the context helps with comprehension. From an alternative perspective, T15, again who uses speech BCI for everyday use, said it depends on the context. If I'm using my BCI with someone who is in regular contact with me, and also knows about the context of what we are talking about, I'm willing to sacrifice a little accuracy for speed. However, if I'm below 95% accuracy, I cannot work the way I need to. So it's clear that daily use of a speech BCI would likely involve natural changes in speech rate, as the importance of accuracy varies depending on the context. In this case, decoders might need to generalize to speeds outside of the speeds they were trained on. So how well do decoders how well do decoders generalize to different speeds? To answer this question, we tested whether RNNs trained at one speed could generalize to others. This matrix represents the word error rate of RNNs trained at one speed and evaluated on all others. Each column represents the generalization of the decoder to each tested speed. Lower numbers are better. And you can see that through the diagonal, the best performance of each decoder is on the speed that it is trained on and evaluated in a withheld test set. If we look at the example of speech rate data at 30 words per minute, the word error rate sits at 17% when evaluating the same speed as training. We can see that speeding up to 60 words per minute increases speech error rate to 59%, while slowing down 15 words per minute fails to improve performance, resulting in an 84% word error rate. If you look at the leftmost column, this shows that an RNN decoder trained across multiple speeds can be a potential way to mitigate the poor generalization, as the word error rate stays more consistent. However, we wanted to explore additional ways to improve the generalization of decoders, informed by analyzing the neural correlates of speech rate. If the neural activity at different speeds is just a linearly compressed or stretched representation, a version of the same template, then simple data augmentations could be possible. We then, again, developed a karaoke-style task where the participant repeats the same sentence at 4 different speeds. Looking at the neural activity in the first principal component, we can see that the same general pattern is repeated in all 3 speeds tested here. The same pattern holds true when looking at the top 3 principal components. After normalizing the neural activity to the same time scale, we can see more clearly that there is indeed a high correlation of the neural activity of each speed, suggesting that linear time scaling can describe how the neural activity changes at different speeds. Leveraging this linear time scaling property, we applied linear interpolation to decoder training data in an effort to mimic the neural activity at different speeds. This involves compressing or stretching the neural activity over time so it is representative of different speech rates without actually collecting new data at those different speeds. When applying time-scaling augmentation to decoding, you can see that the resulting RNNs generalize significantly better than unaugmented data of a single speed. Although there is a slight trade-off in accuracy at the original speed of the data, the word error rates of unseen data remain lower than without data augmentation. Specifically, we can see that the error rate for a model trained at 30 words per minute goes up from 21%, previously from 17%. However, evaluating at 15 words per minute results in a 40% word error rate, nearly half of the previous 84%. The same trend holds true for evaluating the 30 words per minute model on data trained at 60 words per minute, where the error rate nearly halves, going down from 59% to 30%. However, we see that augmenting data to mimic significantly faster speeds does not make as large of an improvement. Additionally, training data collected at faster speeds to augment slower speeds does not improve generalization as much as it does for data collected at slower speeds. So to recap what I've shared today, speech BCI users are physically limited in their speech rate, although their typical speeds do not represent their maximum speeds. Fast speech rates increase decoding error rates. The neural correlates of speech are linearly timescaled at different speeds. RNN decoders do not generalize to untrained speech rates, and imagined speech can potentially restore conversational speed communication. I want to thank all my collaborators at the Emory and UC Davis sites of our BrainGit consortium, and thank you.